paid for by you, of course. NTV's Kennedy Murithi combs through the memorandum and highlights some of what's in the 416 MPs' wish list.
The memorandum to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission by the Parliamentary Service Commission now sheds more light on demands MPs have been making as they seek to better their lives as representatives of the people. Parliamentarians have been denying, at least publicly, about their insatiable appetite, but the demands contained in the memorandum paint a different picture, that of a people keen on fattening their wallets. According to the memorandum, salaries for each of the 416 MPs and their cumulative allowances would amount to about 3 million shillings each member per month. Their wish is a basic salary of 1.156 million shillings, up from the current 532,500 shillings. The PSC letter, signed by its chairperson, Justin Muturi, argues a member of parliament ranks the same level as a judge of the Court of Appeal, while the two speakers of parliament rank at the same level as the deputy president and the chief justice. The MPs want their taxable car grants increased to 10 million shillings, saying the current 5 million shillings is too little. The MPs insist on a car grant, and this demand has an ultimatum, that if this wish is not met, then the government purchases cars for them, fuels and maintains them for a period they are in office. They should also come with a driver employed by the state. MPs want either a housing allowance of 250,000 shillings or have the Parliamentary Service Commission build them houses and service them. All they would want is just keys to the houses. They also want the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to completely keep off their allowances. These include their sitting and mileage allowances. SRC is said to be laughing off some of these wishes, even as some, like the housing allowance, which was effected by PSC, is now the subject of a judicial adjudication. Sources within Parliament indicate MPs are determined to see some of these demands effected, as they insist they only recognize the PSC, which they have also recommended that its commissioners should be remunerated very well. Kennedy Murithi, NTV.
So definitely a lot of reactions coming off of that story, and we shall be following up on the same throughout the day from different parts of this country. We start off from Kisumu County, where our reporter, that is Oko Kuse, is standing by. Oko, what are the residents of Kisumu saying about this?
Varied reactions here, Gladys, and of course a lot of people here are not happy about that proposal by members of parliament to increase the allowances. And I have quite a number of residents here who want to share their thoughts regarding this particular development. Let's start by this gentleman here. Start by introducing yourself. What is your name, sir?
My name is Josephat Oduon.
Okay. So what is your opinion regarding the decision by members of parliament to increase their allowances? We are talking of our house allowances of up to 250,000 per month.
250 kuhusu hiyo mambo ya house allowance, grant loan, hiyo ni ngumu kwa sababu Wakenya, hata sahii kuna Wakenya ambao wanalala mpaka njaa, ushuru itapanda. Kitu ambayo ningependa wajumbe wafanye, wasaidie Mheshimiwa Rais kwa miradi ambayo sahii tunaona kama Mheshimiwa Rais Uhuru anatembea kila Kenya, anafungua miradi. Kila mjumbe pia aangalie constituency yake iko na shida gani, wajenge mashule, waangalie watoto wanapata matibabu, mambo ya health nini, wawachana na mambo ya mshahara kila mara mshahara. Wakenya wako broke.
Okay. Sawa, wacha nisikize kwa huyu mwingine. Anza na jina lako tafadhali.
Jina langu ni Philip Asiago. Mimi mkazi wa Kisumu. Mimi jambo la wabunge kuongezewa mshahara allowance, mimi sioni kama hiyo kitu vizuri kwa wananchi wa Kenya. Kwa sababu hao ni maafisa kwa ofisi ya wananchi. So chenye ningeomba rais, hata wakipitisha hiyo jambo, asiweke sign kwa hiyo nini yao. Hiyo pesa wasipewe. Kwa sababu Wakenya wako na shida. Mbona madaktari wakigoma wanataka kuongeza mshahara, pesa hakuna. Walimu pia pesa hakuna. Ikifika wakati wao, hakuna mwenye siasa, wote ni wajubilee, wote hakuna nasa, hakuna jubilee. So hiyo kitu sifurahi na wabunge vile wanafanya huko. Wafanye kazi ya wananchi vile walichaguliwa, wafanye kazi kwa wananchi kulingana na katiba, sio kwa maofisi wa ofisi katika ofisi.
Mwingine acha achangie.
Naitwa Nelson Omondi.
Tutoa maoni tu kuhusu uamuzi ama proposal ya wabunge kujiongeza mshahara.
Kujiongeza mshahara mimi sioni sababu, kwa sababu kuna kazi ambayo tuliwapeleka wafanye huko. Sisi hatuwaoni kwa ground. Tunasikia ati huwa wanatumia pesa mingi kila weekend. Mimi tangu nifanye uchaguzi sijawahi ona mbunge yoyote ama MCA yoyote. Tunasikia tu wakiongea kwa redio. Sasa mimi sioni haja. Watosheke na hiyo mshahara yenye walipewa. Na hii mambo ya grant 5 million mtu akiingia first term yake, hiyo pesa imetosha. Itakuwaje aongeze 10 million na kuna kazi yenye wanaenda kufanya na hiyo? Tunasikia wakikuja wanachukua wale wasangwenya 4 ama 3 wanaenda kukula nao huko, alafu wanaenda kutangaza wanatumia pesa mingi kule. Mimi sijawahi ona na tuwaone. Wafanyie watu kazi. Mambo ya house allowance 25,000 250,000, hiyo pesa ni mingi. Watosheke na hiyo, wafanyie watu kazi. Na wafanye kazi wakijua watakaa hapo milele. Watarudi tena kwa ground kutafuta kura zetu. Watufanyie kazi hata sisi pia tupate nafasi ya kutafuta. Kwa sababu wakiongezwa hizo mishahara ama hizo pesa zenye wanataka, sisi ndio tutaumia. Hayo pekee yake.
Okay, my name is Jacob Oche. Concerning the salary increment of the MPs, me I don't see it's necessary, because one thing, once the salary, they have increased their salary, we are the people who are suffering on the ground, because we are the people who are paying tax. Now in Kenya now we have so many debts that we need to pay. For instance, a child that is not being born right now, by the time he's born, he already owns the Chinese people like 45K. Now, where will he get this money to give the MPs? What they should just do, they should just consider how we are going to generate money, how we can pay those debts, and how the people of Kenya will not suffer from this all debts that we have. Not that each and every fortnight when they are in the parliament now is just a matter of our salary increment. Another thing also to add on top of that, when it comes to salary increment, you see all of them coming together. But when you come to the fact that now matters concerning Kenyans, also the people from the us taxpayers, you see them now, a lot of people are not even talking now in the parliament. So this thing always puzzles us a lot. So we don't even need this parliament. Thank you very much.
Well, Gladys, those are some of the sentiments of residents here in Kisumu, very agitated and vehemently opposing this idea of MPs increasing their allowances. We are talking of 250,000 house allowance per month, and the residents here are it's not a very enthused crowd here about this latest development on MPs' salaries increment. And yes, you've heard it from the residents here. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Oko Kusa, speaking to the residents of Kisumu County, most of them who are puzzled as to why the members of parliament will go back to ask for more, or rather an increment in their allowances, and yet the common mwananchi is barely getting by. Now, let's cross over to Mandera County, and we're joined by Maulid Ahmed. What are the residents of Mandera saying about this story?
Fine, Gladys, and the shocking, just like the rest of the country, the news that all member of parliament are demanding night out allowances has been received here in equal measures, with some of residents supporting while others is still opposing. But that one is still, but the majority of the residents here support, the residents here mostly are shocked of the demand of the area members of parliament, members of parliament. Remember, most residents here are still in shock and trying to come to terms on how the members of parliament who are well enough paid are still and dare to demand that kind of huge allowances per night. Allow me to invite one of the residents and who could to see the reaction of one or two residents here in Mandera County, and to can have and summarize of what their reactions. Sir, and as you have known, the members of parliament are demanding night out allowances. So what are your reactions on that?
I am Josephat from Mandera County. I am against the increment of the allowances they are demanding from the national government, from the government, simply because these are abundant for us as a citizen and as local people of Mandera County. These people, they should be assisting us maybe to raise some project that is going maybe to support us as a local people, not just to looking away on how they can earn more, whereas we are living in a condition which is not good. Simply mimi napinga hiyo mambo ya kuongezewa mishahara. Sisi wenyeji wa Mandera wanapaswa kuja na miradi ya kusaidia sisi vijana, hasa na watu wale wengine. Si kuja na njia ya kujiongezea pesa wakisema ni marufurupu ya usiku ya kuenda usiku. Ile mshahara yao ambayo ni ya saindi ya 1800 inawatosha na zile allowances zingine. Sasa wanaongezea ile allowances ni kutuwekea mzigo sisi watu wa Mandera. Tunakaa huku, wanapaswa kuangalia sisi mahitaji yetu, kuangalia vile wanasainua sisi viwango ya elimu, kutusupport kama vijana, si kujiongezea mishahara. Sasa sisi inaonekana ni kama sasa kuonekana ni samaki wale wakubwa ndio wanaendelea kukula sana, sio sisi samaki wandogo wa chini. Watu angalia sisi watu wa Mandera si na njia moja tu ya kujiongezea pesa. Tunapinga sasa kama sisi watu wa Mandera.
Yes, Gladys, as you can hear, people here in Mandera County are in shock of how the members of parliament are demanding that huge per night and allowances, yet they are being paid enough salary to maintain their lifestyle here. Just like the rest of the country, many are still in shock here in Mandera County. Back to Gladys.
Clearly, they are. Thank you, Maulid Ahmed, coming to us from Mandera County. And yes, the MPs want to be paid at least 2.9 million shillings each every month in salaries and allowances. Would like to hear what you have to say about that. Remember, our Twitter handles at NTV Kenya, at Gladys_Gachanja. Let's cross over now to Nyeri County. Melita Oletenges, what are the Nyerians saying?
Thank you, Gladys. As you put it, we are coming to you from Nyeri County. We are also delving into this particular case, that is the allowances that the MPs aim to raise for themselves, terming it as night risk allowance. Now, this particular issue last week caused ripples of reactions from residents in Nyeri County and Mount Kenya region, and we are just here to sample some of their views regarding this. Some of them last week were saying regarding the high cost of living already, the MPs should not be increasing these allowances for themselves. But we're just going to sample some of their views. Thank you so much for joining us. Anza na jina lako, pengine utuambie maoni yako kuhusu wabunge kujiongezea mishahara, pengine ni yapi?
Okay, kwa majina mimi naitwa Timothy Kimani, mimi ni mkaaji wa hapa Nyeri na pia mimi ni kiongozi wa vijana pande hapa Madhari. Inasikitisha sana kupata wabunge wetu wanachikana, hasa ikifika ni kwa mishahara. Hapo ndio unapata hakuna tangatanga, unapata hakuna vieleweke, unapata hakuna Jubilee, hakuna NASA. Wote wanakuwa kitu kimoja. Ikifika ni kuwa ni hiyo mamogeji yao, wote wanaongea sauti moja. So hiyo ni ya kuchangaza sana. So sisi tunajiuliza wananchi tuko wapi? Hasa wakati wao wanaenda huko wanapitisha wakiwa kitu kimoja. Lakini wakitoka hapo ndio unapata sijui hakuna tangatanga, sijui vieleweke. So hapo tunashindwa ni nini? So sisi tunasema hiyo mamogeji wanajiongezea huko. Hiyo pesa wanajiongezea. Wajue ya kwamba mwananchi mwenye aliwapeleka huko, yeye anaendelea na kuumia hapo mashinani. Unapata bei ya fertilizer imeenda juu. Uchumi imezoroteka kabisa. So sisi kama wananchi tunashindwa sisi ni akina nani? Hakuna wa kututetea huko, lakini wao wakifika ni huko unapata wanaongea na sauti moja. Sisi tunawaomba wabunge wetu, manake ni sisi tuwapeleka hapo. Na pia bado tuko na imani na wao. Wakiwa vile wanaongea huko na wao wakuje huku kwa maendeleo. Lakini wajue ya kwamba sisi bado mifuko haina kitu. Na pia uchumi imezoroteka kabisa. So wakienda wajiongezee huko, wakijua hata sisi wenye tuwapeleka huko pia tunaumia. So mimi naweza sema hapo tumekelwa sana na hiyo jambo.
Thank you so much. Pengine maoni yako mzee kuhusu wabunge kujiongezea mishahara wakisema kuwa ni risk allowance ya wakati ambapo wanafanya kazi usiku. Maoni yako ni yapi?
Maoni yangu, hakuna haja kujiongezea mshahara sababu hawa ni mataberi. Sababu hawa hapana mwachi atuende wafanye kazi usiku. Kazi yao ni ya mchana. Tena ile pesa wanapewa katika Kenya, hata nchi yote hakuna pesa kama hiyo wanapatiwa kitu kidogo sana. Kwa hivyo ile kitu walipelekwa kule, walipelekwa na tumbo peke yao. Wakupelekwa na kusaidia mwananchi. Sababu mwananchi wa kawaida anasumbuka na hospitali, kitu ya kula anasumbuka naye, hali ya barabara, waji kuangalia vile watu nakaa, stima waangalii. Hiyo mambo yote walipelekwa kule, walipelekwa na utaberi mtupu, kunyaganya watu pesa. Kwa hivyo ningesema Bwana Rais wetu wa Kenya asija kakubali kusaini hiyo pesa, sababu sisi tuliwachagua usubuhi sana kama tunanyashio na mbua, lakini wana haja na sisi, haja yao ni matumbo yao na watoto yao, na sisi bado tunaumia. Kwa hivyo mimi ningesema sisi wananchi katika Kenya mzima tujue tuna wabunge katika Kenya, katika bunge, sababu wale ni mataperi na wale wanapeleka ukora katika bunge, kusema ati watakuwa nafanya mkutano usiku. Hawa hapana watchmen. Tukuwachagua kufanya kazi usiku, tuwachagua kufanya kazi mchana kwa wananchi. Kwa hivyo sisi ningeomba rais kwa hiyo msaada asija akafanya kusaini hiyo msaada, sababu hawa washughuliki na hali ya hospitali, tena waangalii mwananchi wa kawaida bila anaumia na bei ya unga, kila kitu. Kwa hivyo ningesema wale ni mkora kama mkora ingine.
Okay, you've heard it from a number of residents here. Quite interesting bites. Some of them are saying that this unity only comes when it's time to increase their salaries. That is what has been termed as the Kieleweke and the Tangatanga. And also the last man we just spoke to saying that the MPs are not watchmen. Quite interesting bites coming from Nyeri, as you've heard, Gladys. But we're going to keep an eye on this and more reactions from this part of the country. But for now, over to you, Gladys.
Melita Oletenge is giving us reactions from Nyeri County, and as you can hear, no one so far says that the MPs actually deserve that hike in their allowances. And let's bring this conversation into studio. With me is Neri Mawako, CEO, Siasa Place, and a political analyst. Next to him or her is Richard Wafula, a counseling psychologist, and Arnold Maliba, who is a policy and governance expert. Thank you guys for joining us. Now, I know you're here for a different conversation on another menace, which is betting. But before we get to it, Nerima, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, because we've been down this road before, right?
We have. I mean, a few weeks ago it was the housing allowance, now it's the night allowance, and they're so persistent about it. And it's irritating to the fact that they don't realize the burden that citizens are carrying when they don't even have access to housing or employment. And it shows the lack of empathy, one, and understanding of the people that they lead. I think it's very ill-intended for them to do something like this. And I would say that there are several of us who are watching and who are fighting against it, and we're not going to allow it to happen.
Now, Richard, at the end of the day, when you look at your pocket doesn't go as deep as they speak, like they would want theirs to go. What's your opinion on this?
To me, it's unfortunate in this day and time where Kenyans are really struggling to, earn a living. And I mean, every other time we get to hear our MPs wanting to get a salary increment. Actually, it's very unfortunate. And from my point of view, I think Kenyans are angry. And of course, an angry Kenyan is, a sad person. So I want to ask our MPs to spare us this anger by keeping on asking for these salary increments now and then. It's quite unfortunate. It's an aggravation.
Now, they would sit back and say, well, the economies of scale also don't tally on their end. Everyone is living, they have to tighten their belts. So the question here is, Arnold, do they deserve this, or are they going about it the wrong way?
I think the question cannot be if they deserve this or not. It's a matter of governance, and I don't think Kenyans are angry. Let's be real. We've been here since 2002. The issue or the question of MPs' greed is as old as our leadership has been, but at least since 2002, it has actually been a very constant feature. It's recurring, and every time they do that, we complain, come out here, make noise, give views, and that's what we stop. In proper places, MPs would not have addressed any meeting this last weekend when this news came out. But they were all over and people went there, they were clapping. Some of the people who actually are raising these issues today were in those rallies, they clapped for them. They never raised these issues. So Kenyans are not annoyed enough. But this should take us back to the constitution we actually put in place. Whereas it's very progressive, it's very expensive. The constitution we put in place is good, yes, progressive, but quite expensive to actually put in place. And it brought in a lot of complexities that are neither here nor there. People paid by the exchequer, we are calling them state and public officers, and with that then comes in with a lot of technicalities that if CSs are getting these allowances and they are state officers, then we must get. Our MPs are living beyond their means. We must tell them that. There must be a difference that when you come into public service, you are into offer service. They have turned Parliamentary Service Commission into a trade union. It's now actually literally I'm twisting. Rather than being their employer, it's negotiating on their behalf. It's beating up SRC, it's beating up everybody. So literally, they've really turned us, and of course there is the politicization of it, that Parliament only gets about 3% of the whole budget as put together when you look at the three arms. So they think it's lower. And by the way, let's get it clear, the night allowance is the house allowance by another name. They realized that the issue in court was actually going to stop them for a while. So they have brought in this, and I am so sure they have got plan C. If plan B, that is now this night allowance, and they actually are telling us that it can get worse. They wanted 250. If you work out 96,000 shillings per week, that's about 400,000 shillings in a month. So they are just telling SRC and any other person who's trying to go out there that it can be worse. And I'm so sure they have got another trick down their sleeves. They are going to push through these things. Probably, I think it's time to audit the Constitution, and some of these things are the things we need to work on.
Okay, now, Nerima, Richard mentioned something that I think is very vital here. Some Kenyans are angry. Arnold says we are not angry enough because we still let them get away with it. But the truth of the matter is, when it comes to legislation, they get into a house where the rest of us are not, they don't have access to. So what can we do as the people who elected them to keep them in check, because we are not hungry enough, clearly? What else can we do?
I think that there are people who have taken the case to court. It's not that all Kenyans are just sitting complacently and allowing it to happen. So that's the reason why the housing allowance was put on hold. But also for us to understand that what they did was unconstitutional. You know, they went around SRC. It's not like they were using the law to do that. So what we have are people using the law and going above the law with it. And that's something that we do not implement in our own constitution. If we're talking about leadership in Chapter 6 and integrity, clearly our MPs are bypassing that. And so how are they still sitting in Parliament and pushing for these things? So I do think there's a sense of apathy and a sense of helplessness where people are not quite sure what to do. I still feel that they're frustrated, they are angry, and like I said, there are people who are mobilizing around it, people such as myself, who are part of groups who are pushing to stop this, whether it's through the courts, and that's something that the Constitution provides us with public litigation. Mtata doesn't have a law degree, but there's so much change he's able to bring in this country due to that Constitution. So it's not something that we're all out in the streets up in arms, and it's unfortunate, because this is something that should cause us to do that. In fact, even going to their houses and causing blockades, because we all know where our members of Parliament live, and we can get their numbers if we wanted to. So there are ways that we can frustrate them, but I don't think Kenyan people are organized, or they feel that there's the time to do it. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I cannot answer your question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We need to rethink.
There's lack of leadership, of course. You do not expect them to organize themselves. There is need for us to give them a higher meaning to these issues, literally to ensure that young people, or rather necessarily because young people we are going to talk about betting. And the people affected are young people. When you talk about betting, you're talking about employment and unemployment, or underemployment. So it's literally them who are suffering. And then MPs will give all manner of excuses. So I still think, the way she says, the few who are doing it are not enough, in my opinion. Because that is not a critical mass that can actually change. I have seen a research that says that if only 1.5% of any community wants change, it happens. 1.5%. So literally, the few that are doing are 0.0000 something. If we only got to 1%, I'm talking about, like in Nairobi, just about 100,000 people getting annoyed enough. It changes.
So Richard, let me ask, then are we in a position where we need to relook leadership? Because it feels at times people look at leaders as they put them at a certain pedestal, they cannot question them. And the few that are angry, as we are saying, are not enough to actually move the changes we want done. So do you feel that's the feeling? We view leadership a certain way?
Yeah, but the sad thing as well is, as voters, I think we are hoodwinked. I mean, these people, we know them. And some of them have been re-elected you know, this is their second, their third time.
And
now,
they come from our buckets.
Yes, so the question is, how are we, I mean, in a position to elect them again when we clearly know what they're going to do in Parliament? And so sometimes I look at us as voters as the problem. Because then if we could hold our ground and say, by the way, we don't want such leaders. As Arnold, you know, is saying, it is us, if we want change, then the 1.5 and even a larger percentage, it's an opportunity when we get to vote in leaders. Then we ask ourselves, what kind of leaders do we want? Otherwise, then we vote in leaders, and at some point, they're doing what they're doing now, and we have no say. I mean, even as I say, we're angry. Truly, there are some who are angry. But looking back, we're the ones who voted them in. So what are we saying? We need to get to a position where our moral conscience is very right to dictate us to vote in good leaders. Otherwise, then this story will continue going on, and probably will not get to the solution of this thing.
And not only vote, keep them accountable,
Yes.
because that's very important. Now, Arnold, before you speak, let's go to Mombasa County, where my colleague Kevin Mutai also has reactions on the same from that region. Kevin?
Well, thank you so much, Gladys. This debate on the leaked memorandum to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on the attempt by members of parliament to add themselves allowance is not something that is being discussed here in Mombasa, but across the entire nation. This is something that some have termed as a provocative and ignorant of the tough economic times that some of population are going through. Remember, they're saying that there are people here in the country that cannot even afford their basic need, that is shelter, education, and even food. And this is something that they feel it is that members of parliament need to reconsider and address these issues affecting Kenyans first before going or rather moving forward to the move of trying to add themselves allowances. Let me just quickly bring in some of the residents here in Mombasa to get their views on what they think on this particular move. Kwanza kabisa, anza kwa majina na utueleze hii juhudi za wabunge kujaribu kujiongeza marupurupu. Tupe maoni yako kuhusu swala hilo.
Kulingana na mimi mwenyewe, mimi naona wao wabunge wetu ambao sisi tunapigia kura kila siku waende pale wafanye nini, watufanyie kazi. Lakini wakienda kule haja yao ni nini? Wanaongezwe mzara, na hiyo mzara, hiyo pesa yetu hiyo ni pesa hiyo ambayo inatoka kwa tax ya wananchi. Lakini kila kisikia nasikia tu wamekaa kikao, kesho msara juu, kesho msara juu. Saa hii msara yao karibu milioni ngapi? Milioni 2. Sasa milioni 2 ikifika mwaka moja tena itakuwa milioni 3 na. Lakini hii pesa hii ni ya wananchi. Sasa mimi nauliza serikali au nani ajifikirie, wananchi kawaida ndio natoa hii pesa. Hao watafaidika nini kama pesa yetu ndio wanachukua kwa watu wachache wanaweka kwa mfuko. Kesho yake utasikia kama huyu mbunge huyu ameshikwa, hata amekula nini, amefanya ufisadi. Ufisadi inatoka wapi? Na pesa yetu ndio anachukua. Sasa mimi nasema serikali asidanganye sisi. Mbunge hawezi kufananisha na nini na dokta. Dokta ndio mkubwa, na dokta kuangalia pesa ya dokta kabisa ni ndogo kabisa, na dokta anafanya kazi kushinda mbunge. Mbunge anafanya kazi eneo yako. Mimi nasema hivi, lakini serikali ajichunge wabunge. Mimi nasema kwa upande wa wabunge pesa yao apunguzwe. Kama ni nyingi iwe ya 800,000 kabisa. Kwa maana huyu mbunge anapata nini? Anapata marupurupu. Anawekwa petroli. Anafundishwa mtoto wake paka hata kama nasoma Ulaya, nasoma wapi. Sio pesa yake, ni pesa ya wananchi. Kwa hivyo wajameni, nani anakubali pesa ya wabunge apunguzwe 800,000 tosa?
Sawa. Baadhi ya wabunge wanadai kwamba wanataka kulipwa marupurupu ya kati ya shilingi 20,000 na 24,000 kila wanapotekeleza majukumu yao kule Nairobi ama kule bungeni. Je, waitikia ama unaweza tueleza nini hasa kutokana na hatua hiyo?
Hatua hiyo kusema ukweli si mzuri, kwa sababu wananchi wenyewe wako na shida. Saa hii hata unasikia kuna sehemu fulani watu hawana chakula. Hiyo pesa inatakikana ipelekwe kule isaidie wananchi. lakini ikifikia wakati huo wakiongezwa, sio pesa itapungua huko, wale wenye njaa watapata pesa namna gani? Kwa hivyo hiyo kusema ukweli wanatugandamiza.
Kwa sasa wabunge wanataka marupurupu yao ya magari kuongezwa kutoka milioni 5 hadi milioni 10. Unalipi la kusema?
Kwa kweli inasikitisha.
Anza kwa majina.
Kwa majina naitwa Musa Tiso. Kwa hivi kwa sasa tunasema inasikitisha sana kwa wabunge kujiongeza mshahara, kutokana na kwamba taifa letu lenyewe halijasimama kiuchumi. Tuko na maskini wengi ndani ya nchi. Kuna wengine wanakufa njaa. Kuna wengine pia hata wanalala kwa mitaa. Jambo ambalo tungelifanya hivi kwa sasa, tumeona kwa mwaka mmoja hivi kwa sasa rais ameshindwa kuidhibiti hii serikali. Tunaomba tu kwa roho safi atuvunje serikali, tuende kwa uchaguzi, tuchague watu ambao hawana tamaa. Kwa sababu hata tukisema tutaegemea upande wa mahakama, itutetee sisi kubwa. Hakuna mtetee mwana.
We apologize for that technical hitch, but that was Kevin Mutai from Mombasa County getting those reactions from the residents there in as far as the members of parliament asking their allowances to be hiked. And it's interesting how much this conversation has really made people come out to speak. And looking at Twitter, there are some people who says there's Derek who says it's us Wanjiko who have made our MPs demand more salaries and allowances. Whenever they come for the funeral, the MP is asked to give handouts. I mean, who does not need a salary review upwards in this day and time? Then another Ronald Lagat says MPs wanasumbua sana. Kwanza hawa wanalipwa pesa nyingi kuliko hata MCA na hakuna kazi yoyote eneo bunge lao. And somebody here says let's call on the CJ Maraga to please break up this parliament. Who increases their own salaries? Tabia mbaya sana. Well, your comments still coming through at NTV Kenya at Gladys_Gachanja. And Arnold, you had a heated comment on this.
No, I actually just wanted to speak to Nerima's point that about Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yes.
And of course, the constitutional end of it. And I am sure of one thing, that we cannot moralize members of parliament on this issue. They have shown that them and this thing called shame really are very good friends. They don't care, as in...
They don't know it.
As in, shame to them, it's not something they are really going to take up. And these guys who never came to power via article or via Chapter 6, it's very hard to actually put them to task using Chapter 6. People who came to power through extra-constitutional means cannot be put to account using the constitution, because they find ways of going round and going round and going round. In the long run, we will actually have to find some extra obvious now that, because they're actually using extra legal means, extrajudicial ways, they have got ways around these things. That's why I think we have to move away from giving, just getting angry, and I don't think this is, we are not angry enough. This is banter you guys are just doing, because next week they'll not be doing that. Like I said earlier on, last week when this issue came up, no member of parliament would have been allowed to address any gathering last weekend, be it in a funeral or any other thing. That is the only way they know how to get about this, and they are justifying everything. I know they have got what, if you went to court, they have got a legal case, because we have got the Employment Act 2007, and that is the landmine in this case. Because if they are state officers, it's not fair for them, actually at the legal level, that some other members of who are state officers, like cabinet secretaries, will get this allowance and they are not getting it. And of course, SRC also did not put the whole issue together properly when they started dealing with it. The people who we love pointing out are members of parliament. There are people in public service who earn immoral salaries. And that is what MPs are pointing at. We are not listening to them enough, even as we complain, because we know this is immoral. What they are doing is immoral. It might not be illegal, by the way. It might not be against the law how they are getting around it. But it is immoral, it is bad manners. They are really not caring, and they do not feel, or rather, their demands and the Kenyan situation do not match. Because an average salary in this country is 35,000 shillings. How many times will that go into 1 million shillings, for example? Yeah. They now want 3 million shillings. People in this country, like for example, let's talk about Nairobi. We're in Nairobi today. 60% of Nairobi live in only 15% of what is Nairobi. They pay rent that is less than 20,000. more than 40% of Nairobians pay less than 15,000 shillings of rent. But MPs want 250. We really just have to get around and find ways not to go to court. I know this issue lies with Maraga. And people will say, let us not go out of the law, let us use the law. But this law is so progressive that they can beat it. It's so elastic. You know, as when you get progressive, you become so elastic. So I'm thinking we probably need to go to the old, tested, tried and found true ways of actually forcing them. Like she said earlier on, we know their homes. How many of us have sent our MPs texts, for example, telling them that as your constituent, I don't like that. We have their numbers. What do we send them on WhatsApp and Twitter? We're asking them for favors.
Nice idea.
So you cannot complain here and you're sending him a text for favors. Send him a text now. Reach out to a text. Write on his page. Tell him you don't like it. And all of us do that. All of us have got those texts. If an MP is going to get up to 10, 15, 20 texts today, telling him that we don't like what you are doing, you are a member or you are my member of parliament and I don't like what you are doing, they will rethink this. Otherwise, they are now silent. Just a few of them who are shameless are coming out to speak and defend. The rest are quiet, waiting to defend it in the House. And then next week we will be quiet and they will win this. And we will be there. We will still be here complaining and getting around that. And then another cycle will come and on and on and on.
Going.
Because who gets allowances that are 3 times more than your salary?
It is absolutely.
Because if your salary is about 700,000 shillings, how are you ending up getting 6 million? Even if it were bonuses, even if you are the hardest working person, really, what kind of production are they doing? And the House has got important bills that are piling up. Some of these guys do not speak in the House. They don't do anything. All they do is that they go out in funerals, make noise, do hate speech, use abuses, and that is what they want us to pay for them.
Nerima, morality. They are a reflection of society. So is this us saying as a country we have lost it totally in terms of keeping checks and balances on what should be done, right or wrong?
I wouldn't say that, I mean, it's difficult to say that we haven't lost it just because of the rampant cases of corruption that we witness every day, and not necessarily witnessing the justice system working for those who are just. So it's difficult for us to talk about young people having morals when their own people who govern this country don't. But to talk to what Arnold just talked about right now, the main issue here is the level of salary and allowances. That's the issue that I think we've agreed on, how it's too high and the average Kenyan earns too low. And these are the conversations that we need to be having. And SRC being able to work as an institution. We cannot have or talk about morals without institutions, okay? If someone is morally corrupt, there should be an institution to put them somewhere that says you are bad, and because of your behavior, you cannot progress in our country. But that doesn't happen. We have anybody and everybody mixing with everybody, and in fact, those who are morally corrupt are seen to be doing better than those who live day by day when it comes to living a life of integrity. And those are the things that as a country we cannot build on if we don't have institutions that support integrity. But to now wrap up in this discussion, because I feel like we've been talking for quite a while, is the fact that the average citizen does not understand that they're the ones paying for this salary. When I hear the comments that you're saying, how we're the ones who make our leaders this way, if they were in parliament discussing access to services more affordable to the people, then we wouldn't be begging them for these unnecessary needs. Because a lot of times we're asking them for school fees, we're asking them for funeral expenses, we're asking them for hospital bills, which frankly, again, back to the Constitution, is their work, and also is Article 43, which is social rights and access to them, and Article 55, access to education for young people.
So we are enabling bad behavior?
Yes.
I think we've all agreed on that. Something needs to change, and we need to have a conversation on something else that's becoming a menace in society. We're talking about betting, and the conversation today will be betting, the social ill, and actually just the betting industry in the country is set for a shock after the government revealed the identities of the companies whose licenses have either been suspended or are yet to be renewed pending the fulfillment of stringent regulations to streamline the industry. Now, leading firms SportPesa, Betting and Betway are among the firms that the Betting Control and Licensing Board says should ensure they are tax compliant before their operating licenses are renewed. NTV's Brenda Wanga with more.
The clampdown on the betting and gambling industry in the country is gathering steam, and now the biggest player in the multi-billion industry are staring at an uncertain future.
Let me not lie, some of you will be out of this business soon.
Early last week, the government made good its threat and either deferred or cancelled the licenses of 27 companies. Amongst those in the government's crosshairs are the giants SportPesa, Betin and Betway, who together control at least 85% of the market. Others include BetPower, PremierBet, Lucky2U, 1xBet, Mozabet, DafaBet, WorldSportBet, Atari Gaming, SamsBet and BetBoss, amongst others. The government maintains that for the companies to be allowed to continue to operate in the country, they must, amongst other things, ensure that they are tax compliant and prove that they have been operating within the law and that they are sufficiently liquid and have performed financially well for the last 4 years.
You are willing to make money, go and pay for football clubs in Europe, but you don't have money to pay taxes in Kenya.
The industry, which cumulatively made 204 billion shillings last year, remitted only 4 billion shillings to the taxman. Now the government wants them to pay tax arrears of 26 billion shillings to KRA.
We all must obey the law, and we all must live by the law. So the era of cutting corners, is gone.
The government's renewed efforts in taming what it says are rogue operators in the industry goes beyond the tax issues. The government has insisted that it is also looking after the moral well-being of the country's youth. A report by the Betting Control and Licensing Board after vetting the betting, gambling and lottery firms indicate that over 500,000 of the country's youth blacklisted by the Credit Reference Bureau landed on that list because they borrowed to finance their betting and gambling habits. The government now wants to regulate this.
And don't tell me that it's business. It's not business. This is business in the death and destruction of our children. You cannot make money at the altar of destroying our young people.
After South Africa and Nigeria, Kenya has the third largest betting market in Africa. However, the proceeds from this industry are banked outside the country despite the fact that the countries have Kenyans listed as director, but only in name. Investigations have indicated that a good percentage of the said Kenyan directors do not own shares in the companies. Sources have indicated that this renewed push to clean up the betting industry has the blessings from the presidency. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Well, betting has been one of those conversation points for a long time now, and especially when the government moved in to ensure that they curb how they operate in the country, coming from a background that most people are gambling away their lives, literally. I'm still with Arnold Maliba and Richard, who is a counseling psychologist, and the reason why we're having this conversation is so that we can park betting as a social ill it is. Now, gentlemen, in many circles, many will say gambling, betting is not a bad thing. It's a recreational thing. But others would say, no, this is something that is teaching our young ones or our country at large the easy way out, as far as getting the money is concerned. So I'll start with you, Richard. Are we in a position where we're dealing with a classic case of too much of something is poisonous?
Yes, too much of something is poisonous, and I think I want to start from the perspective where I want to look at betting from a different, dynamic. We have forms of betting. Actually, we have stages of gambling. So we have what we call the social gamblers. And we have what we call the problematic gamblers. And then lastly, we have what we call the pathological gamblers. Now, betting is fun for those where we classify as social gamblers. I mean, you're betting for fun. I mean, it's not that really you want to really gain so much from it, but it's just fun. Like you can be involved in any, any activity that will actually, create fun. Mm-hmm. Now, it moves to problematic gambling, where now you realize you cannot do without gambling. At that stage, then we call it as a disorder in psychological terms, because then it is something that preoccupies you. It is something that really you find yourself most of the time engaged in. Mm-hmm. It even becomes worse when now it moves from being a problematic issue to a pathological issue, because then at that point it becomes an addiction. And once it becomes an addiction, then it becomes very difficult to actually let go. And of course, as you start as a social gambler, there are high chances that you move to be a problematic gambler, and there are also high chance that you move to be a pathological gambler. Mm. Now, when we look at gambling, then we are likely to assume that a good number of our youth are falling between problematic gambling and pathological gambling. And of course, there are reasons why people are gambling, as we may want to discuss about at some stage.
Okay, now Arnold, between 5 and 10 million Kenyans are feared to be addicted to betting and gambling, with the problem likely to worsen. Now, that was actually a statistic I came across that was done in January.
Yes.
Of course, when we're here and we're in the middle of AFCON, you can only imagine how that looks like. So what do you think the problem here is? When did we cross over from recreation to what he's talking about, problematic and psychopathic?
Well, from a policy perspective, I really want to look at this issue beyond what he classifies as a social, gambling as a social game or something. No one gets into a painful game unless it has got gain. Gambling is painful because it causes loss. You're not so sure if you're going to get it back. I do not think people do gambling, at least in this the world today, as recreation. What kind of recreation? What is the beauty that comes with losing money? That bit of classification for me is still very, very problematic. There's nothing social and recreational about throwing money. You know, money is work, money is time, that you're throwing away a bit of your life just for fun.
But it's a game of
Everything
chance.
we do, everything we do as human beings, we are doing, because we are so selfish as human beings. That is the core of everything. That pain is the certain thing, and the other bit of it is that we are selfish. It's about us. So what is this joy that is derived from putting your money and effort elsewhere if you are not hoping for something out of it? That's why I still feel gambling, from where we are as Kenyans, let's not get that very clever definition around it. Young people are in it, and most of Kenyans are in this because they are out to hunt for something. They are not in it for recreation. For them, it means serious business. It is serious business. And by the way, gambling essentially will not be so bad because it's as old as trade and mankind has been there. But then, how do other societies handle it, and how does it work out? We know that gambling destroys, definitely. Even as we know that we might not be able to avoid it. It's a sector, it's a vice that we have to live with.
But isn't this the point where we are talking about it being too much of something being poisonous? A little bit of it, a controlled bit of it, is still good.
If only we took care of the root to this, then we will say it's too much. We have got 25 million Kenyans who are of working age. 10 million of them are jobless. Of course, of those 10 million who are unemployed, 7 of them are structurally unemployed, as in they just don't know what to do. 3 million are in between jobs. And I'm talking about guys who have got training, the 3 million, training, tertiary qualifications. They are here, they are neither here nor there. So with that, then we will not be having with people, because again, our definition of success, what's the definition of success in this country, in our society? That somehow we have really come up to that occult, the occult world of everything from nothing. That you just wake up in the morning, and today Gladys owns KICC, for example. Yesterday we were here with you, you were just the normal you, and then today you own this. So everybody hopes that in gambling they will make it. But we also have not addressed the core to this issue. So I still do not think that we can go around and say gambling is recreational, it's social, or anything around that. For Kenyans, this is serious business. We are in this because we want money. We are in this. I'm a Christian, and all of us are waiting for Jesus at some point. So we know that one day God is going to bless us. So we work hard and we move every morning, we pray, and we know that my day is coming. So everyone in gambling also has got that religious aspect to it and attachment to it, that my day is coming. This particular bet I'm putting in is that which will actually come through for me. So I think we should move away from looking at it for what it is and address the issues that are driving us into this. Why would you go to take a loan to put money into gambling? Because you expect higher returns. It's only that it's not business as usual. Yeah.
But that's what most people have turned it to be, Richard, right?
Yes. I want to clarify something, and I say that gambling starts from somewhere. Even as I agree with you that truly that gambling is a main issue that we have in our country. But when I say gambling as a social gambler, I mean, it's the entry point. And so as you're not careful, then you actually drift towards being a problematic gambler and being a pathological gambler. But I agree with you that why would you want to venture into a risk that, of course, will lose and cause you pain? But looking at the other side, and of course not justifying gambling, is that those who also gain. You know, it's not just losing, losing, losing. But what makes people now get into addiction is the belief that I may get more than what I got today. Because then, today I win 5,000. And unfortunately, and this is where now our youth are really struggling with gambling, is because then you win 5,000 today, for example. Then you reinvest the whole of it. Then you lose. Then what do? You don't have any other money. So what do? You opt for other ways to get that money, to reinvest again with the hope that you will get more. And so when you get to that position, then know that you're a problematic gambler drifting towards being a pathological gambler.
Okay, Arnold, I think at this point we need to understand the reason why we need to sit down and talk about the stages of gambling and how it is that people get into that dark hole is because it's an addiction like any other. People do not, engage in alcohol so that they can feel pain. It's a recreational thing, but if you don't put checks and balances, it takes you down a very slippery slope. So I agree that, Arnold, we need to speak on the reasons why this has become so big in our country, and I think we'll soon be taking a break. But before we do, just give me one that stands out for you as why we got here as a country, because it's not only a youth thing.
It's
a societal thing.
It's a societal issue. I think on the entry point, like he said, he talks about social. That's why for classification, we must just get it right. If you do not define anything correctly, then whatever you say after that, that's why in every unit you ever do in school, you always start with foundations or principles. That's where we always begin. When you hear principles or foundations, it is the genesis. Now, entry point is seeing an advert, a testimonial that I only put in my 50 shillings, and I won 10 million shillings. Who doesn't? If that is the entry point, that is your entry point. You are not a recreational person. You have come in for serious business. This is a forest. You have, that testimony gives you the feeling like my day can also come. So you're also getting into the forest to hunt. Now, digital, we have deepened banking, for example. That is one of those things that actually makes this thing work. It's actually technology. Before we start, today, anyone, even in the village, who has got M-Pesa can bet. Because so even as we deepened banking, we made access to digital finance, and we opened up finance inclusion for almost everybody as a country. It also comes with its own vices, and it's one of those things we did not foresee. So from purely structural end, the deepening, the technological end has actually enabled this, because whereas we are famed across the world as having really done very well with digital money and banking, at least enabling the financial inclusion for everybody, it came with its own risks that you can actually access money very easily. That's why you see even mobile loans are now doing very well locally. They will not do well in other jurisdictions where mobile telephony and digital banking is not. So it's one of those things we do not see very well. And it's going to get worse, by the way, even as we get into the fourth industrial revolution, for example, in the second machine age, because so much of what we need to do will just be around us. That then gives you a lot of access to things you will not be doing. Because there's a reason why some people do not have ATMs. They do not put up mobile banking on their phone, because they know that at the slightest provocation, they'll just reach out to their phone and get their money from the bank. So that access in itself has actually also made it very easy. But largely, from where I sit, let's deal with the structure. Again, those guys, because it's a big industry, they should pay taxes. That's why I'm thinking, normally we have allowed industries to take root without regulation. We do not think through processes clearly. So we allow this to go on, and all of a sudden we realize it's a big industry, we can see the data, but we don't see the money. We only have got 4 million, for example, 4 million taxpayers in this country, out of 25 million people who are working. Something somewhere is not wrong. So that bit, I think the regulation bit, it's time. We are late, but we shouldn't stop at that. People cannot be making billions and they don't pay taxes.
True. Yeah. Okay, Richard, when we come back, we will look into more reasons as to why people would actually get to to a position where they risk their all just for the sake of having some money come their way in this amount. And of course, it also speaks to some of what our MPs are also trying to do here. Living beyond your means also is another conversation that we'll be talking about. Remember, the conversation is betting as a social ill. Stay with us, and remember, you can reach us on our social media handles. that county.
Of course, as expected, Gladys, there are mixed reactions regarding this decision by the government to shut down some of these betting companies. We are talking of 27 companies whose licenses may not be renewed. But here in Kisumu, there is that decision is eliciting some mixed reactions. Here I've just spoken to some few individuals who have been participating in the betting, and they have other reasons why they think that the government should actually rethink that decision. Here is one of them. Let's start by you introducing yourself and then you tell us. Utueleze tu kidogo kuhusu mambo ya betting.
Kwa majina mimi naitwa Malaki, mimi ni mfanyikazi katika maeneo haya. Mambo ya betting imekuwa ni kusukumana huku na huku na serikali, but naona betting ni kupata na kupotea. Kuna wenye wanaamua mimi niweke yangu, nipate yangu, ama mimi nijaribu kuweka ili niweze kupata nini? Kupata kitu kidogo. Mimi naona serikali wasifunge hii kitu, watu waendelee tu kubet. Regulation ndio waongeze regulation katika betting na waweke hata na kama ni age. Kama ni students kuanzia form 4 kirudi chini wasibet because already imewekwa over 18. So I think students with the form 4 kutoka form 4 kirudi chini hawachani mambo ya betting.
Inasemekana ya kwamba wengi wa Kenya wenye wako wamekuwa blacklisted kwa CRB, Credit Reference Bureau, huwa wanachukua mkopo hizi za Tala, M-Shwari na KCB kujihusisha na betting. Pengine wewe una agree ya kwamba hiyo ni ukweli?
Hiyo nayo ni kweli kwa sababu watu wamekuwa CRB wengi sana vijana. Watu wamekuwa CRB, hata ukijaribu kufanya nini, ukijaribu kwenda kwa loan, uende bank utaka loan unaambiwa uko CRB. Sasa ukiangalia unapata labda ulichukua loan ukarudisha late, labda hujamaliza kwa sababu ulikuwa unataka kufanyia betting, alafu hiyo pesa ikaenda hivyo. Sasa unajua unaona hakuna vile unaweza rudisha. So kitu kama hiyo inabidi sasa unaingia CRB. Lakini wengi sana vijana, youth tuko CRB sana. Wengi tuko CRB sana.
Kuna faida yote pengine umewahi ona mtu akipata kutokana na betting?
Okay, mimi naona kuna rafiki yangu wengine wamefaidika. Kuna wengine wamefaidika, kuna wengine ambao pia wameumia, kuna wenye walikuwa na maduka wamefunga sababu ya betting, unaona. Na kuna wengine pia wamejenga nyumba kwa sababu ya betting. So ni kitu iko 50-50. Kuna upande ya kuumia, kuna upande ya kufaidika. Pia kuna wengi pia wanasema betting inaharibu watoto sana wazazi. Wanalia betting imechukua akili ya watoto wote. Sana hii mambo ya simu, sijui nini. Naona betting upande mwingine iko sawa, upande mwingine naona inaumiza watu. Lakini sasa naona serikali ndio waweke regulation vizuri. Wewe kama uko miaka hii usijaribu kubet.
Sasa wacha tusikize kwa mwingine. Hebu tafadhali karibia. Anza na jina tafadhali.
Kwa jina I'm called Eric Odongo.
Eric, the government is planning to shut down some 27 betting companies. I don't know whether you've heard about this and what is your reaction?
All right, that proposal we turn it down because betting is not as such negative. It has helped very many families. Even though there are some people they pay part of the fees through the money from betting. And we also fault the government and the officers that some students are betting in the school fees.
Yes.
School fees nowadays isn't paid in the bank direct. Even the higher education loan board is paying you through a bank. So you cannot withdraw money and then you can bet with it. It's being paid directly to the institution. So the idea that people are using it for school fees, no.
You said that betting encourages laziness. Actually, that is one of the concerns the government is raising, that it is encouraging laziness among Kenyans. Do you agree?
No. I fault that because most of these are professional. For example, as a carpenter, you always bet on a weekend. Apart from this virtual betting, the virtuals, this live betting, that's what I can say is bringing laziness. But through through an email based, I don't see any laziness.
In the sense that you don't want to look for employment, you just want to sit down, put your bet there and wait for money to come in.
For example, you can see my tester. I'm an electrician. I always work as an electrical technician. I don't just depend on betting for the rest of my life. I bet on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. The rest, the other days I just work.
Have you ever lost a bet?
What?
Have you ever lost a bet?
Yeah. 50-50, sometimes I always get, sometimes I lose.
What is the highest amount of money you've ever lost in a bet?
In a bet, 2,000.
2,000.
Yeah.
What is the highest amount of money you've ever won in a bet?
22,000.
22,000.
Yeah.
So how did you use that money? Because it says that this money, a lot of us who win it don't even utilize it well.
Yeah, some people are different. Somebody can win 20,000. You want to bet again with 5,000. Me, I don't do that. My betting money standard is only just 100 shillings. But I always bet this jackpot only, this mega jackpot. I don't bet this other run. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. Well, Gladys, you've heard it from the horse's mouth. Those are very reactions from some residents here in Kisumu who think that the government should give this decision to shut some of these betting companies another thought. The advancing varied reasons there, as you've heard some saying that it is a 50-50 thing. You benefit, sometimes you lose, but then they are also calling on the government, instead of revoking licenses, to revisit regulations regarding betting in the country. So those are some of the sentiments here. We all know that it's one of those money minting industries in Kenya today, and of course those concerns being raised by the government regarding taxes and all that. According to the residents here, that is a problem that the government can deal with and should not be instead extended to the people who are participating in various betting activities around the country. Back to you, Gladys.
Kusa, definitely varied reactions coming from Kisumu County. And it's interesting because somebody is mentioning we need to be aware that betting goes way back. Even in the Bible, soldiers bet on Jesus' clothes by casting lots as they crucified him. So we need to think about this from very different angles. And you have had the varied reactions coming from Kisumu County. I wonder what the people of Nakuru County have to say about the same. And Bridget Ngana joins us with some of those reactions. Bridget?
Well, Gladys, thank you so much. We would like to contribute to the ongoing discussion about betting and how it has affected the young people in this country. As of today, there are reports that nearly 500,000 youth have already been blacklisted by the Credit Bureau. And so that is something that is of concern to the people as far as betting is concerned and how it's affecting the young people in this country. In the streets of Nakuru, we're going to speak with the Wananchi on what they feel about this government move to close some of the biggest betting companies that are in this country. Thank you so much, Karibia. Welcome on NTV. Unaweza kuja useme majina yako na pia utuambie unahisi vipi kuhusu mwito wa serikali kufunga some of these betting companies wakisema inaathiri vijana na pia jamii.
Mimi naitwa Richard Orina. Kwa upande wangu mimi ninaweza sema ya kwamba si kupenda kwa vijana, bali ni ile wameona ya kwamba this might be the only shortcut yenye wanaweza pata hata anga capital ya kuanzisha biashara yao. Kwa hivyo kwa maoni yangu ni kwamba hamna haja waifunge, badala yake wapate kuwaelimisha jinsi wanaweza tumia hizo pesa baada ya wao kupata, lakini sio eti kufunga. Sababu hawa vijana kucheza katika hiyo mchezo wa pata potea ama hiyo mambo na betting ni sababu hawana kazi yote ile. Wameona at least this is the only way yenye wanaweza kujiendelesha. Kwa hivyo ili serikali labda itake kuangamiza hii mambo na betting, ni wapate kupea vijana kazi.
Lakini wanasema serikali kwa hizi kampuni pia hazilipi ushuru. Sasa hiyo ni moja wapo ya njia pia kuzifunga, kwa sababu jamii vijana pia wanasema wanaiba ili ndo wapate kufanya ile betting.
Kama ukweli ni kwamba hawalipi ushuru, hata nami hapo sasa naweza simama na serikali nisema ya kwamba kwa ile kampuni yenye hailipi ushuru ni ifungwe, sababu nchi lazima iendelee kwa njia ya kujitolea katika kulipa ushuru. Kama kampuni hailipi ushuru, basi ni ifungwe. Hata mimi hapo nasimama na serikali.
Lakini kwa nini unasema kuwa vijana wanasema afadhali wa bet ndo wapate capital? Lakini kuna serikali pia imeweka mbinu tofauti kwa vijana kupata hiyo capital.
Kupata capital sikatai ya kwamba serikali imeweka, sababu hata kuna kuanga na youth fund. Lakini ukweli ni kwamba hizi pesa wakati mwingine hazifikii wote. Tafadhali ndio ziko, lakini pesa ni za wachache. tafadhali. Kwa hivyo ndiposa hata vijana wanaona heri apate hii, sababu haendi kurudisha, sababu hata akipewa hii ya youth fund ataambiwa arudishe. Na ukweli ni kwamba biashara, hata ukipewa loan leo imaanisha ya kwamba itakuwa imepiki in 2 weeks ama 1 week. Lazima upewe duration of something around maybe 3 months or 1 year. Lakini you may find that biashara kijana ndiye atapewa hizo pesa kutoka youth fund, hataweza kurudisha, sababu hali ya uchumi ya Kenya na hata mambo na biashara. Kwa hivyo heri betting hii, utapata milioni yako 1, 2, 3 na haurudishi. Yes, kwa hivyo mimi nasema ya kwamba kwa wale wako na kampuni za betting, tafadhali ushuru ni lazima, sio kupembelezwa.
Yeah. Asante sana. I'll be joined with another resident from Nakuru just to give us a brief also on what he feels. Asante sana. Karibu kwenye NTV. Anza na majina yako, na wewe unaona kama hii betting inasaidia jamii? Utaangalia tu pale kwa kamera.
Okay, thanks. Mimi kwa majina naitwa Lucas Aligo. Mimi ni mkaaji wa Nakuru. Kwa kweli betting tunaiona na tunaisikia. Hata mimi mwenyewe sijaifanya hiyo kazi, but mimi sijaipendelea sana. Kwa maoni yangu naweza sema sio nzuri, kwa vile vijana wengi huwa wanachukua pesa ama wanaweza iva pesa, mtu anaenda kubetia. Mpaka hata wazee wanafanya hiyo kazi ya betting, mtu anatumia pesa zile zenye angeenda kulipia mtoto school fees ili apate ka kitu afanyie betting. Nao mwisho anaungua. Hata wamama pia unaweza waachia budget ya nyumbani, fanya hiki na kile, alafu anaenda anafanyia betting, anaungua. Sasa kitu ingekuwa hii betting ni biashara ya watu binafsi walijiunga na wakatengeneza hiyo mambo ya betting. Serikali yenyewe ingeonelea isaidia hao vijana, itoe pesa, itenge pesa yenye inaweza wasaidia wafanye kazi. At least hata kama kuna youth fund, huwa inaweza kuwa pesa hiyo ni kidogo, wanapata kidogo, mtu akienda wanakusanyika pamoja wanapata kama 10,000 hiyo yenye itaendelesha mtu. Waone kama wataongezea hiyo pesa ikuje kiwango ya juu, at least watu wapate kitu, watokane na hiyo mambo ya betting. Kwangu, kwa maoni yangu, sijaona kama ni nzuri kweli.
Unataka ifungwe pia? Unaunga mkono serikali kufunga baadhi ya hizo kampuni?
Mimi naunga mkono serikali, kama itawezekana wafunge baadhi ya hizo kampuni, waangalie njia nyingine yenye vijana wanaweza saidika. Juu sasa imefika mahali watu hata wafanyi kazi. Mtu anashinda hapo mpaka jioni, wanachana miraa, wanafanya nini? Bora afanye betting. Na akikosa atafanya nini? Si mtu ataenda kuiba. Hiyo ndio njia moja ya kuleta ulezi kwa watu kutafanya kazi.
Watu wanakuwa walezi na hakuna kazi inafanyika.
Kuna kazi yenye inafanyika juu ya hiyo. Juu anajua akibeti atangojea. Na ili hali matokeo yake ni zero, hautapata kitu. Yeah.
So asante sana. Gladys, I think those views are kind of diverse and also expressing the need or the state of the county in terms of the feeling rather of the people here in Nakuru about they feel about betting. Some of them feel like, okay, some of the companies should be closed because they're not paying taxes, but some feel like this is another way of the youth have been able to access, some of them, capital for their business. Of importance is that some of them feel like this is not something that is pro-social in terms of building the society. So Gladys, back to studio.
Thank you, Bridget Sangana, and definitely very, very valid concerns brought up in those reactions coming from Nakuru County. And just at this point, I think we need to now switch gears and look at it step by step. Problem betting could be taking root in Kenya for several reasons. I think we're in agreement. Yes. And I think we need to now debunk what these issues are. First of all, it's been mentioned that unemployment is the biggest reason here. Richard, unemployment and some that are looking for shortcuts to get the money. Which is which?
Right. I think from the point of view as a psychologist, I want to look at betting as a social problem first. Now, what do I mean when I say it's a social problem? One, looking at what is happening to these people who are betting, the youth who are betting. And I want to agree that, yes, unemployment is one of the many reasons why people are into betting. Because then, like what Arnold alluded earlier, that 25 million are of employment age, but only 10 million are employed. So it means 15 million are jobless. What are these people doing? Some have lost hope. And so betting is one of the ways that rekindles their hope in terms of gaining financial gains. But of course, it's not a nice way, it's not a good way of earning money. But the truth of the matter is that if you go down and, from what you're featuring, people will say, the government should not close this because then some of us use it to pay rent. But they're also forgetting that betting as a social vice is actually destroying families. It's killing, relationships. It's even contributing to the unemployment in its first place, because then you bet with all that you have, then it becomes an addiction. You actually avoid from going to work, then you are sacked.
Or you bet away your company.
You bet away your company. So a number of things in the society that will contribute to that. But I also want to look at betting as a learned behavior. Some of these people that are betting have learned to bet. So what is the society doing to actually encourage betting? Some of these advertisements that we are seeing, circulating all over in our media and all that. And of course, when I observe, and of course behavior, one of the ways of learning a behavior is through observation. Now, as I observe those, media adverts, as I see other people betting, then what am I doing to myself? I'm likely to be tempted to start betting. So then we should be asking ourselves, what is the government? And of course, I want to, applaud the government for the measures that it's taking. Because then what is the role of the government and the society at large in terms of curbing such advertisements that will enable people to learn how to bet? We were just discussing here, you're saying that, and of course, Gladys, you're saying that as you grew up, you never stepped into a casino.
I have never actually stepped into one.
Even up to now.
Yes.
So then it goes down to how you are brought up in that, society or that family that instilled some morals in you that actually enabled you not to visit some places. But nowadays, what do? We find children in casinos. We find children where people are playing cards. We find people where people are playing pool and it's for money. Now, there are children there, there are youth there who actually do what? Learn from these adults that this is the way to go.
Okay, and Arnold, you had mentioned earlier, this has been there for a while, and why some of us were never attracted to it is because of how it was packaged. But now there's a different angle that it took, and it's become a worldwide problem, which is?
Actually, like you said, when we grew up, betting was something that was frowned upon. At least when I was growing up, there were only two ways you would bet. You would either go to a casino, and that's something I would not think of, because you would be killed by your parent.
Literally,
yes. And then the other way was you go and queue on a yellow kiosk to buy, I think it used to be charity sweepstake or something.
Yes.
So those were the only two avenues I knew that people would bet, and it was not something that was looked at as positively. The turning point came when betting or gambling was brought into marketing as a strategy. So you buy my product, and the more you buy my product, you are likely to win this amount. There are some of us who have got phones because a producer somewhere or a manufacturer somewhere said that if you buy this phone, you are likely to win 10 million. Some of us have got service providers we use today. And we have got those numbers not because we really sat down and thought, this is the kind of service provider I want, but because when you encountered that particular service provider, you watched or heard a story about somebody who had bought their service or their product or their airtime, and that is how they had become millionaires. When we moved gambling into marketing as a strategy, and I think that was lazy of marketers who stopped thinking about creative ways of marketing and advertising and thought the only way was actually to act like drug peddlers. They normally give freebies to young people or rather to children, and when they have become addicted, then you are told, get me money. And that is how we actually got into gambling, at least after 2000, when mobile telephony came into place in this digital world, the digital revolution as it showed up, people decided that the only way to market stuff was through induced addiction, and the induction was through buying. Buy this airtime, buy this service, and we will get you. So bringing gambling into marketing is what has actually brought us here. Even as we go around that was a turning point. But even as we get around here, I know we would want to look at it as a social problem. But if we're going to look at it as the social problem, there are so many angles to look at. And I know I appreciate why you're looking at it, because that is your strength. But I am still very convinced that if we got a number of these young people, let us talk about people destroying their jobs because of gambling as a problem, as opposed to people telling us, give us what to do and we will not do this. people do not have jobs. The jobs they have, or they are underemployed. Today we have got people who are professional gamblers. They are buying serious stuff, and people know that he does nothing else other than gambling. He wakes up in the morning, puts on his computer, has his internet on, and he's all over. That's just what he does, and he makes money, he lives a good life. So many of the young people are saying, you go around, do 3-4 interviews, and you realize people are not taking you seriously, and you think, why not? Mathematics has not been a very good thing for so many people I've met, at least in this country. But today, gambling has actually made Kenyans mathematicians. People who would struggle with quantitative techniques, subs and subsets, now know how odds, they can actually calculate.
Oh yeah,
this is
they're
how it
experts,
works.
yeah.
So you will actually realize how it's easy to learn some of these things. So
now, okay, Richard, I hear what he's saying. Where there's a will, there's a way. Yeah. But then again, explain somebody who has their ducks in a row. They have the job, they've got the money, but they are hooked to this betting and gambling. What is the motivator here?
You know, human beings, and I love the, you know, how human beings are created. Anything that puts you at risk, sometimes it excites, it motivates. It makes you want to explore, venture more in that field. Now, you may have it, as you're putting it, you have a job, you have reasonable income, but I think the risk factor becomes a motivation to venture into that field. So then, these are people who imagine that it's not about the money per se, it's about the risk. And so the risk excites them. And sometimes we use that, you know, to explain why a thief knows the risk of engaging in whatever he's doing, but he'll, you know, run away with it the first day. But still, even some of the people, if they were in a group, some will be shot dead. For example, those who have been robbing banks, some will be shot dead. But still tomorrow or other day, you realize that they still come back. I mean, they're not coming back probably to get more money. They're coming back because they're enjoying the risk involved in the act that they're in.
The adrenaline.
The adrenaline. And so some of people in betting, it's the adrenaline that is caused by betting. Hoping to get 100, 200,000, and here is the 70th minute, things are still not happening. You know, that anxiety, you know, that state of anxiety, to some is the motivation why they're into betting.
Interesting that you say that, because research shows that men are more likely to get addicted to the vice, betting, than women, because apparently the former are susceptible to risk-taking, and losing and winning large sums of money is actually a thrill for them. Now, Arnold, you probably are cut from that cloth that is no longer there, because most men are actually attracted to betting. And the fact that it's connected to some of the things that men enjoy to do. We're talking about football. Like right now, we're in the season of the same.
Yeah. True, men are likely to gamble than women. Addiction for men is something that comes almost naturally, because adrenaline to rush to be there and just feel like you are a risk taker. You went to the forests of where a dangerous forest, or the Valley of the Dead, and you came out alive. Even if you came with scars, it feels good. There's a story to tell about it.
Yeah.
But even as we get around that, I'd like us to probably move to a level where we get data that links betting to people being in CRB. Because again, you get money. Too many people I know, in some research I've done for an organization, is that people will tell you that I went into a mobile loan, I asked for a mobile loan because I had an urgent need. But even as I took care of that urgent need, I didn't know where else I would get money. So I took a bit of that percentage and hedged it into a bet, hoping that it would help me offset that. So then you get around. I do not know whether we are going to have ABCs of safe betting, either way. Because once it becomes an addiction, and we have got lax rules around regulation, we need to regulate this industry. I think even as we lament about the problem, there need to be stronger regulation around this, because we are destroying a generation, people who are betting away their future, and you know they take time. So you are not doing any other thing, you just bet, wait around, and wait. I'm thinking probably if I were to buy into his categorization, talking about a person who's doing social betting or for recreation, is that you are doing whatever you are doing, but you bet in as a by the way. But then a majority of the people who are doing this have got their plans. There's a funny story when we were slightly young as teenagers. There's a friend of mine who, you know, when you're just starting life and you don't have a lot of money, money doesn't come around easily. Just teenagers around then, you're just coming out of high school. So a friend of mine, who's now late, played a joke on another friend of mine that you dropped your 50 shillings here. And the guy turned around and said, where's that money? And this guy said, no, I was only joking. You didn't drop it. It was a joke. I said, you know, immediately you said that I had dropped that money, I had already budgeted for it. So, so people today bet and they budget for the bets. You know how desperate the situation is. That you already have got, you promise someone, I'll pay you. I'll pay you. But you know too well that you're promising to pay, and all you actually are hedging on is because you have a bet somewhere. That disillusion, you know, guys have actually been telling us from Kisumu and Nakuru that no, don't take away these things. Just ensure that they are helping our lives. If you ask them if they've helped them, no, but they know somebody. It's the same thing we do with our politics. We also gamble. And I'll give an example of a politician, not naming them, but a politician who is very generous. So everybody votes for him knowing that their day with them will come. You meet that one person who is known in a village or a setting or an estate, and you take care of that person, probably a shoe shiner that everybody knows. You go there, have your shoes shined as a politician, then you leave him with 50,000 shillings. Everybody knows because he will tell everyone. So all of us know that there's a few people we know who have actually gotten there. But we have not had that opportunity to have our day in sunlight. So we get around, it's a main thing, we do the regulation bit of it. Probably we also need to talk to the generation that we are in, because it's a bit of, today, most of the people you're talking about who are betting are actually millennials.
Yeah.
And so being millennials, that is the biggest population of the adults today. When you talk about the largest adult population, being millennials. Generation Z is coming up very fast. And I think millennials are very selfish. Actually, that is a research. It's an established fact. They are very selfish. Everybody's thinking about myself and I. And people who are out there to make money, capitalism being what it is, betting and gambling is actually the very negative aspect of what capitalism can be. That I would make money as much as I can, so long as it's legal, quote unquote. And anything, including all the evils we have had in the past, including the Holocaust. People were being killed because it was legal. It was legal. There was a law to it. So just because there is a law to it, there's an enabler to it, doesn't make it right. So what is legal is not necessarily what is moral, and what is legal is not necessarily what is right. So I think we also need to have an audit of this generational cohort, see how we will help them.
Okay, now Richard, just going back, and now that he's touched on the politicians, we're talking about the MPs asking for more allowances, and actually one of the reasons they say is that their salaries should be bumped up to at par with those of the judges of a court of appeal who earn 1.1 million shillings per month as basic pay. And Arnold had alluded to the fact that they are looking at civil servants and saying they're being paid more than a sitting MP, so I need mine too. So it's mine. Let's talk about living within your means. If our leaders will not even do that, isn't this also reflective of a society that wants the shortcut to that big money, and betting has been one of those avenues?
Very true. Betting is one of the avenues that, to some, it's an enabler to success. Because then you're imagining that today I'll bet and I'll make the monies that I'll make, and tomorrow I'll be living a very good life. But again, like what Arnold is saying, the capitalistic world where, I mean, it's me and, you know, myself, and it has to be me. So then it enables betting, because then you want to make it, you know, in quotes, you want to be successful. But you don't want to follow the right channels to success, because then it appears to be a bit difficult. Or if you ask some, they'll say there are no opportunities in this country. There are no jobs, there are no opportunities. But that may be here or there, depending on how you want to view your situation, depending on how you want to interpret your situation, and why you will imagine that you are living in a world where there are no opportunities. And so yes, living beyond our means, and even for those who have, and wanting to live like others, you know, the example you're giving, you know, you want to earn like the High Court judges, you know, we will never earn the same, and that's the fact.
But
so
ambition is not wrong.
No, ambition is not wrong.
It is how you skew it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
ambition is not wrong. But then how are you interpreting it? What are the channels that you're following to be successful? And unfortunately, our millennials are imagining that the route towards success should be a shorter route, and then betting therefore enables that. And unfortunately, of course, we know that not all times you bet and be able to get the monies that you get. So it ends up depressing them. It ends up creating more problem for them, and, which is not a very nice thing.
Okay, so betting looks like it's here to stay.
It's politics.
Fine, government is putting it in check, but then again, we need to talk about solutions here. Earlier, Arnold, you had alluded to ways probably the government would, or even those stakeholders in the betting world, the checks and balances they would put to help along society to engage in betting, but do the due diligence, have the checks and balances.
But just before I respond to your answer, you spoke about politics. Do you know that most politicians are serious gamblers? Because our politics is gambling. That if I win my seat, I'll actually have made it my way into the granary. So I will loot as much as possible.
Yes.
People are betting to get into power. They throw all they have
to get into
power, knowing too well that on that day you get into power, you are inside a granary or you've just broken into a vault. So you take home as much as you can.
Yeah.
So even our politics is betting. We are a
In
betting
itself.
society largely.
Okay.
Now,
all right, solutions now, yeah? And I think Makari is giving you a head start. Gambling should be made impossible not only for the young people, but also for the poor Kenyans through tightening the entry qualifications. Your thoughts?
I think that is a very good point.
Yes.
That let us make it impossible for people to get in. Well, a little bit difficult. So that to get in, the threshold should be much higher. So that we do not bring in people who are already vulnerable. They get in, they're already depressed. They do not have a lot of ways around their lives getting into it. But largely, let us begin at the basics. Can we get our young people going to school? Access to education, skills development and training is still the leeway for young people to make a livelihood. Because young people do not have factors of production. The only thing they can bring, one time too many, is their skills to bring themselves. They offer themselves as the living sacrifice when it comes to the economy. So if you do not have education, if you have no access to skills, if you have no access to training that enables you to compete into the market, that is one of those ways they get in. People do not get into betting one time too many because they have decided. But you want to make a living, and all the other ways look like they are not easy to access. But this one is always here, very close. Why not just branch in and see if it works? The other bit should be around regulation. We have got a habit in this country of putting into place industries and stuff without having looked at it all around. And initially I spoke about, for example, when we brought in digital money, for example, we were pioneers, we were path breakers, we left the trail for everybody else. But we did not look at the consequences that will come with it. So today, guys are fighting in parliament, trying to come up with laws that break monopolies, feeling that one service provider is too huge, and that is a national security threat, of which is also true. But these are issues we should have thought through. Even as we open up to technology, I do not know who advises the National Security Council, for example. But every time we are going into a new field, we are breaking a new path. We really need to think about it entirely. So regulation around this, when we brought in this and we digitalized and guys showed up, and we have proved that we are a vulnerable society because we love bribing. The people who have given licenses to these people gave them licenses, knowing too well that some of them wanted shortcuts. These guys didn't bring themselves in here. They didn't just mushroom from, because most of these people are foreigners. They saw a market here, they found a very weak system, and they have exploited it. So even fighting corruption, to fight gambling, also fight corruption. Because these people have got a way of finding their way here, operating around here. Who allows them to do that? It is our own systems we have put in place. Now, the people who are showing up, I'm happy the CS is actually coming up and is serious about it. The other bit will be around what, of course, people say that we're getting sentimental, but what are our values? What is the role of the church, for example? What is the role of the family? How do parents bring up their children?
Okay.
What is our definition of success?
I need you to hold on to that thought because we will come back to expound on it. Let's cross over to Murang'a County, and this is also a reality in that county too. And Martin Mora joins us with a perspective.
Thank you so much, Gladys. As you have rightly said, yes, we are coming live from County 021, Murang'a County. And today, specifically, I'm in Maragua constituency, which is one of the 7 constituencies in Murang'a. I just want to talk to some of the residents here just to tell maybe their views about the social ills or maybe the advantages and disadvantages of gambling. Are they for it? Are they against it? Maybe what the government is doing to regulate it, are they for it or against it? As you can see, I'm joined by a very young ladies and gentlemen here. Nataka tu nianzie kwa majina. Uniambie, serikali imekuwa ikiregulate mambo ya betting. Wewe betting kwako unaona ni mzuri ama ni mbaya, na ungeambia serikali nini?
Betting kwangu kwa majina naitwa Selina Okumu. Nasema kwamba betting it's not good. For example, me as somebody's wife, I'm struggling to get my own money, but my husband is taking my money to go bet. After all, he doesn't get anything or he doesn't gain anything. For me, no. Betting, no.
Okay. Maybe what do you think the government should do just to ensure that such things do not happen?
Okay. What the government should do about betting, they should especially young boys, maybe they are stealing money from their parents, go bet. I think government should just wakatae tu mambo ya betting kabisa na watoe tu kabisa, sababu betting inachangia hata maboys wachanga kuiba pesa kutoka kwa wazazi wao. Na pia sisi wenye tuko na wazee tuko affected sana. Some of them hawafanyi kazi kwa bidii, wana rely kwa sisi wanawake wao. Bado tunapata ugumu, ukifanya kazi umehustle, unafaa ulishe familia, lakini sasa after all mzee atakuja pesa yenye umefanyia kazi, na usipotoa pesa utapigwa na hata utafukuzwa. So please, hiyo betting mimi nimesema no. Serikali tafadhali mtu sikie story ya betting ishie hapo please.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Okay. Let me talk to another gentleman over here just to get your views. Do you think betting has affected the society that much?
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Alex Mugera, and first of all, despite my other side job, I'm a gambler. Me, for my case, I say that this thing is okay, and the only thing they can do about it is to regulate. But betting, it has, in a way, tried to create some jobs for some of the youth, and at least some people are getting some cash. So I'll just advise that let it be regulated. Yeah.
We have seen cases of people stealing, others, young men becoming lazy. The only thing they do is look for 50 shillings, 100 shillings and bet. Do you think the kind of generation that we're bringing up will affect the future of this country because of laziness and betting?
Okay, my view in that, unemployment is a challenge. So most of the people who are involved in betting are those people who are trying luck. So most of the time when they are trying luck, you find that at times they don't have a direct source of income. So it can be good if they, at least those people, if they can get at least something to use to bet before they can just go. Because at least you have seen some cases that it has even led to even theft, and there are some people, at least you can find that in some occasions people are trying to take some other people's properties so that they can source the betting, and most of the time they just lose. But I can just say that let it be regulated, let be rules that if you want to bet, use your own resources and bet wisely. Yeah.
Maybe you have said about regulations. What other kind of regulation would you like to see being put to regulate the sector?
Okay, what I can say, let the local authority be strengthened so that at least they can be able to deal with people who are involved with malpractices in betting. Because I do hear most of the farms say that bet responsibly. So meaning that you should think before you just place your bets. Because if you know that this thing is just for losing, then you must know what you can do about it. So for my case, I'm for betting, I'm for betting and I must do that one. So let them not prevent us from betting.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Let me talk to another person over here. Nataka tu, naona wewe ni mzee wa makamo. Na vijana wanatafuta pesa wanaenda kubet. Wewe kulingana na wewe, betting unaona ni mzuri ama ni mbaya?
Mimi sioni kama ni mzuri. Juu inaweka vijana wengi wawe lazy. Mtu anashinda saa yote akifikiria vile atabeti. Hakuna kazi atafanya. Hata hawezi kuja kushinda hapa kwa duthi. Anakaa tu. Juu anajua ataenda kubet.
Wewe kama mzee, naona wewe ni mzee wa makamo, ungetaka kuambia vijana nini kuhusu betting?
Naweza kuambia wafanye kazi, waache hiyo mambo ya betting. Kazi ndiyo muhimu.
Asante. One more, maybe kwa sekunde 30 niambie tu, wewe betting kwako unaona serikali fanye nini?
Betting sio mbaya kwa sababu hiyo ni kubeta kwa mtu. Sio kupasiwa na mtu atabet. Na ukifanya kazi ukitaka kwenda kubet ni shauri yako. Kwa hivyo mtu akitaka kubet, abet. Ukitaka kukula wewe ukule. Ukitaka kupeleka familia upeleke familia. Lakini huwezi bet kama una pesa kupelekea familia. Hii ya pesa kidogo, ni pesa mingi. Unaona? Ni pesa mingi. Kwa sababu huwezi bet na 100, unabet kutoka 100 kwenda juu.
Na maybe ushaisikia mtu ameshinda pesa hii area huku kwenu, mtu ameshinda betting?
Wako wengi.
Mtu ule alishinda kama kiasi gani?
16,000. Yeah.
Alikuwa ametumia kama pesa ngapi kuweka?
200.
Asante sana.
Yeah. So betting idumu.
Asante. As you have just heard, Gladys, those are some of the views from Murang'a residents. Some are for it, some are against regulating it. So they are saying it's only luck, but some are saying it's bringing laziness and has actually increased even theft in some of the areas, and some even wrecking marriages, as the first person who had spoken to had said. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Mati Mora, coming to us from Murang'a County. Very interesting thoughts coming from that region. And Richard, Arnold, we were just smiling and, laughing at some of those comments. But let's talk about, Richard, something that came up. The government needs to regulate, but we also need internal regulation as people. Because even those that are saying betting is a good thing, they're saying there needs to be checks and balances, especially on a personal level.
Yes, true. I had said earlier that betting is a behavior, and betting is a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. But more importantly is much of what we are today is because of what we think. So what are we thinking about betting? Because then our behaviors are influenced by our thoughts. So if we were to be able to even develop an internal regulation, is to try and help these people who are betting to change their perspective about betting. Because in as much as, yes, we agree that the government needs to put checks and balances, but as long as it's still in somebody's mind that betting is okay, it is fine, I'm telling you they'll find a way of betting. So probably we need to be discussing, we need to be asking ourselves, should the government also insist on these betting firms to ensure that they have a program to actually psychoeducate their clients? Because like I've said, one of the remedies, and from the psychological perspective, is the change of mind, the shift of the perception that betting is good, that betting can earn me success, that betting is okay. And I want to agree with what also Arnold said, that, this vice starts from our family. What does the family do to actually support or discourage this? Because then from there it moves to the society. It moves the neighbor, and from the neighbor it moves the entire society.
And just listening to the lady, she says she brings in her hard-earned cash, but the mzee takes it and goes and gambles.
Quite sad. It's a sad state of an affair. So I want to ask our viewers, and I want to ask the government plus all the betting firms, that it is time we need to support those who are betting to change their mindset about betting. Because it is ingrained in the mind that betting is okay, that I can survive with betting. When you even imagine that you can pay your rent through betting, then you're failing. Then you're actually heading towards being a psychopathological gambler, because then you have convinced yourself, and regardless of the advertisement, and of course the government can shut all the advertisements, but will that stop? I've just seen one of my friends SMSing me and telling me that even if the government will shut all the betting farms, we will go international.
Okay.
You know, we will
it's
go
like
international.
they're saying, hata wakizima taa
Hata wakizima
tutakunywa.
taa tunaendelea kunywa. But you see, hata wakizima taa and you have changed your perspective about betting, then you will not continue. So then the question is, what are we doing in helping those who are betting change their mindset towards betting? We'll succeed if we get to that point of helping these people change their mindset about betting.
Arnold, is there something like responsible betting? Because clearly the checks and balances point to responsible betting.
I think if we understood the mechanics of betting, then we will actually know exactly how we might actually think about coming with a solution towards it. Because betting primarily is not a sustainable business. It's not a venture that you will actually say that I'm in this. You know, when you wake up, we know that if you wake up every morning, work hard, you will actually get reward for that. Like working land has always been faithful to men, that if you work land, it rewards you. It will always give you. But betting does not work that way. Betting is actually premised on luck. It's something that you really are not so sure. And we need to tell people that luck, hope, or wishes are not a strategy of a life. Those are not life skills. You do not learn luck as a life skill. It doesn't work that way. So I think one of those things that we need to do is to work on our financial literacy. Financial literacy is still a challenge. You will have everyone out, all of us, whatever age we are in, but we are not financially literate. And even if we are literate, the literacy we have is not sound. Because if you will understand what money is, what work is, what value is, then you will think better at how much you put in. Like safe sex, all addictions, betting like all the other addictions, we have tried to work on cigarette smoking, for example. We draw very terrible pictures and put them on packets. People still smoke. Very learned people. They know those dangers. I even know doctors who smoke. So I do not know how we eventually, you cannot really get rid of all addictions completely. We do the same with the drinking. We have been talking about you must be 18, drink responsibly. Now you're asking me about betting responsibly. Probably we can still do the ABCs of safe sex, that you abstain.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can be faithful with the service provider you have. But then the other bit of it is that C is also that you probably will need to do with control. The C being control, that how you bet, don't put your life at it. Because there are young people who are losing lives. You know, as we say that they steal and do everything else. We know people who you sell your motorbike if you are a boda guy, or take the last coin you have, put it into betting, and then the game goes the other way. Then you just pick a rope and go to hang yourself. So around financial literacy, I think it's something that we cannot run away from it. And then the betting firms should also, you know, the way cigarette manufacturers and alcohol producers have a burden on them, that social burden on them. I don't think betting has the same syntax like the manufacturers of alcohol and cigarettes do. Because if you look at the money they make on a bottle, some of them actually, somebody did a graph of what in a bottle of alcohol the manufacturer takes home. The rest of it is actually sin tax, a lot of taxes up there. But then on betting, I think we have not really made it so prohibitive. Knowing that it's a vice and it's a necessary evil, but I don't think people go, everyone who's into betting knows that it's not a good thing. And not being a good thing, being a bad thing does not entirely mean that it's illegal. We can do it. So it's a necessary evil. So being the necessary evil that it is, how do we get around it safely? That we tiptoe around it and just be safe. One of those things, I think, if we had higher taxes, then we will ensure that these little guys who come up, you know, some of these, what no one is telling you is that some of these betting firms are just con games. They bring in a lot of money, pick a lot of money from people, and you do not know in your living memory anyone from that particular betting firm who has won. And they are all over. Some of these things are just serious con games. And I think those are the ones that the CS should actually be looking at. People do not see results thereof. You have not seen anyone closer to you who has won. So that element still goes back to us and how we control ourselves. But I would simply say that we need to understand how betting works, the financial literacy bit of it, and then exercise restraint, have the ABCs around it, that you not drink too much. Our people still drink until they actually lose their sense and get out. And I'm talking about reasonable people. So this one, we are not talking about some hopeless human beings. We're talking about people who are very knowledgeable, very progressive human beings, but they put all their money there.
Okay, Richard, even as we close, we cannot ignore the fact that this is an addiction like any other.
Very true. Very true. It's an addiction like any other. And, you know, as counsellors, we will treat it as an addiction. And for us, we'll be able to support our clients go through the addiction process, where we'll be able to help them to unlearn that addiction until they get to a point where it's no longer something that they engage in. Yeah, and probably just to advise or, you know, tell our viewers that reach out, let them reach out to us. We'll be able to help them be able to unlearn that behavior, because then as long as they remain with that thought, they will better with their lives.
It is all about the thought and thought changing and habits too, right, Arnold?
I know that we are Africans and we say that something must surely kill a man. Let it not be betting. Die of a better thing.
Yeah.
Do every addiction with bit of control. Life is still good. Work is still wonderful. Being responsible is still a great thing. Living a life for working hard and giving a story. You cannot write a story or a book on how I made my life through gambling. It's not an inspirational story. Our lives are stories to other people who come after us. Let us find ways of actually ensuring that we live lives that are inspiring to other people. Let us not be here as examples of human beings, people who are just here and did nothing. Let us not be afraid to think. Think, work, apply yourself to whatever you are doing. But in whatever you do, I know we are going to argue, and amongst men we argue about that. We say something must kill a man. Do not die out of gambling.
Well, I think that's a very good place to leave it at. Arnold Maliba, policy and governance expert, and of course, Richard Wafula, who is a counseling psychologist. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. And the conversation has been betting the social ill. And as much as we are taking in the government, putting the checks and balances on the betting firms, it is important that we also look inwards to ensure that, as Arnold is saying, this is not the thing that kills you. Thank you for your time on NTV today. My name is Gladys Gachanja. NTV Sasa starts right after this. Stay with us.
Thank you.